Hello, everybody, and welcome to Christopher's Data Privacy Show. I'm your host, Christopher Smith, and today we're going to discuss our data privacy story of the week. And this story is about DoorDash suing New York City Council over their new ordinance that was recently enacted on a 38-6 vote in August. Now, this ordinance, just to give you a broad summary before we dig into it later, just in broad terms, this ordinance now requires third-party food delivery companies, such as DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, and etc., to provide restaurants, so the restaurants on their apps, provide restaurants with customers' data upon request. So as long as the restaurants request their customers' data, DoorDash would have to give it to them. Now, you may think, oh, that's fine. That's what they normally do, right? Well, no. This ordinance, no, because usually what happens is DoorDash will give them limited information to complete the order. So it might be, DoorDash could give them, for instance, let's take McDonald's. DoorDash can give McDonald's the customer's first and last name and the order number, which is all the information that's really needed to complete the order. But this ordinance takes it a step further. Now, DoorDash is required, upon request from the restaurant, is now required to give these restaurants not only the customer's first and last name and order number, but now their email addresses, their phone numbers, and the biggest one to me is their physical mailing address. All right. So in this video, I want to discuss some of the privacy concerns that I have with the new ordinance that was passed by the New York City Council. All right, so what I would like to do is I would like to show you the actual ordinance here. We actually have it posted at the bottom of the screen, but I always like to show you the actual wording and not just do a whole summary of it so that you can understand and see, some of the points that I want to make in regards to some of the privacy concerns that I see in this new law. So let me share my screen and we can get started. All right, so this is the ordinance here. This is the law here enacted in City Councils. This is the local law. And the highlighted portions are some of the portions that I have trouble with in regards to, the protection of the consumer's data privacy. So let's read this first one here, right? So the first one states that a food service establishment, right? So a restaurant may request customer data from a third-party food delivery service. And upon that request, right, as I said earlier, the third-party food delivery service shall provide them all applicable customer data. And again, customer data, it could be their first and last name, phone number, email address, and physical street address. Now, some of the concerns I have with that section is this: a food delivery companies, right? So DoorDash, in this example, is giving more information, way more information than what's required in order to complete the service, right? So the reason why I have concerns about this is because if you look at other privacy laws, such as HIPAA, right? HIPAA requires cover entities to only use the information or collect the information, enough information in order to complete the service, right? Just enough to complete the service. Well, DoorDash giving in our example, McDonald's, my street address, my email address, that's too much information. Why? Why do they need all of that information? You know? And obviously, more importantly, is, I wouldn't want McDonald's to have my street address or my email address, to be honest with you. Right. So that's what I don't like about that first part there, which is, what this whole um, law, like the general requirements of the law, like the crunch of the law, is that's what I don't like about it. And also, the restaurants are allowed to maintain that information as long as they want to. I don't like that either. I don't like that either. Because again, businesses, I don't care if it's DoorDash, McDonald's, whoever, you should only collect enough information to provide the service, not any extra. Okay. So that was the first part I didn't like about the new law. Now I'm gonna share my screen again, and we're gonna talk about the second part. So the second, another part that I don't like about this new law is this one here. And this essentially says that the consumer, right, shall have presumed consent of sharing their information, right, with the restaurant. It's presumed. Wow, presumed, right? So essentially, this local law forces consent upon the consumer, even though the standard practice, right? The standard practice is for the consumer to not share that information with the restaurant, right? So, for example, if I order McDonald's through DoorDash, right? If I order McDonald's through DoorDash, McDonald's does not receive my address because they don't need it. Why should they need it? That's the normal course of business, and that's fine, right? Even when I go inside and order McDonald's, I don't give them my address. I don't give them my phone number. So the standard practice, right, it's for them not to get that information. Therefore, why is this local law, right? Why is this law enacted by the New York City Council? Why is it requiring, why is it saying it's presumed that I have consented to that? Right? I believe that's a violation of the Fair Information Privacy Principles, right? The first one is consent. It's consent. I have not consented to that. You shouldn't presume my consent, especially when it comes to what I presume to be sensitive data, right? Although other regulations may not say, or other statutes or laws may not consider this to be sensitive data, I do. Just think about it. Restaurants are going to have my first and last name, my phone number, and my physical address. That's pretty sensitive. And in the usual course of business, usually in data privacy statutes and laws and regulations, anytime a business collects sensitive information, right? Sensitive, it has to have the consumer's consent, affirmative consent. It just doesn't have mine, right? Now, of course, let me share my screen again. People can say, oh, well, DoorDash is supposed to have like a little, notice within their site or within the app saying that we will share that information with the restaurants, which thus gives you the opportunity to opt out. No, I want an opportunity to opt in because this is sensitive information. Sensitive. Okay. So that's what I don't like about the second part here. It's the fact that this law presumes my consent. It's not good. All right, so moving on. The third section C, this part also concerns me, right? So this part essentially says that third-party food delivery services cannot limit the use of their customer data that they give to the restaurants. They can't limit it. That's what this part says. Wow. Wow. I mean, that puts the customer's data at an extreme risk, right? Third-party delivery services not being able to limit the use of their own data, right? That's their data, right? That they collect from the customers is extremely dangerous, especially since they're liable. They're liable whenever they give out the data. Whenever they give out the customer's data, they're liable for that, right? So if they don't put limits on it, you can't put limits on it, right? That means that restaurants can use that data for more than just advertising to their customers, right? They can use it for anything that they want. And later on, it says they can't use it for, they can't sell, disclose, or rent it for a financial benefit. But outside of receiving a financial benefit, they can use it for whatever they want. Just think about it. Imagine if a covered entity under HIPAA or a financial institution under the GLBA, right, writes in their vendor agreement, right, writes in a vendor agreement, let's say with a data processor, and they say, we will provide you with our customers' information, customers' data. And yes, you use that data to provide your services, but you know what? If you want to do more than that, cool, there's no limit. There's no limit. Imagine what the agencies will say to that, right? You can't do that. And the reason why is because it's not safe. It's not safe. And also the consumers didn't consent to that. How can they fully consent, right? How can they fully consent to the restaurants having their data when they don't know what the restaurants are going to do with it? That's the point of consent, right? Notice consent. How can you you're not providing proper notice for them to consent to? Goes back to the fair information privacy principles, right? So again, that's what I don't feel comfortable about, the third-party delivery companies like DoorDash, Uber Eats, Postmates, to not provide limits to their data that they give to the restaurants. So that's another part I don't like about this, the new law that was enacted. All right. So the next part that I don't agree with is this. Food service establishments, right? So restaurants that receive the customer's data shall not sell, rent, or disclose the customer's data to any other party in exchange for financial benefit. Unless, except with the express consent of the customer, right? So again, it says, shall not sell, rent, or disclose such customer data to any other party in exchange for what? Financial benefit. Financial benefit. The CCPA says for valuable consideration. It says for valuable consideration, not financial benefit. So what does that mean? As long as restaurants are not receiving money from disclosing consumers' data, they can do whatever they want. So for example, they can collect consumers' data. So we can use my McDonald's example. Again, this is just a hypo. I'm not saying McDonald's is doing any of this, but I'm just giving you a hypo here. This is, so basically, if I work at McDonald's, I can call DoorDash and say, hey, can you give me, the names, phone numbers, email addresses, and physical addresses to all the customers that that placed the order through your app last month. So they can give me all the information. Cool. Have all of that information. Well, guess what? I can disclose it to friends. I can disclose it to other co-workers who have nothing to do with this information. I can even take it to marketing companies, right? And say, hey, can you all draft up consumer profiles to find out where my customer base is based on this area? I can, potentially disclose it to customers, right? So if a customer wants to know, if a customer walks in, right, and says, hey, I've noticed that, this person I work with, they ordered this food, we're buddies, we're friends. What was her first and last name? What was her phone number? Or his phone number? Do you have their address? And again, I'm not saying all restaurants would just willy-nilly give out that information, but all it takes is a friend, all right? All it takes is a friend. That's all it takes. A harmless friend. It's a harmless joke, harmless jester. This law does not protect consumers' information if that were to happen, as long as there's no financial benefit. And it doesn't limit it. Right? As long as there's no financial benefit. So that's why I feel uncomfortable about that section, because it says that there's just no consequence. There's just no consequences for businesses, right? As long as they don't receive a financial benefit, there's just really no consequences for a lot of the things they can do with the customer's data that can put it at risk. All right. And the last part I don't like about this law, which actually isn't in the law, right, which is important, is this law does not provide, this law does not require restaurants to have any type of, system requirements or to conduct any assessments, on their system or data. It doesn't require them to have any type of system protection, right? The same systems they use to store the consumer's data, they're not required to have any type of, regulations on that system, no type of assessment, right? That's scary. That's scary because every other consumer data privacy law at least requires there to be these type of assessments run on their systems that's storing data. There are no system requirements here. Restaurant. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Right? If, let's say, DoorDash gives a restaurant the customer data, the restaurant can store that data. I mean, they can print it out, leave it on the counter. They can put it in, they can just open it up in Word, leave it on their computer, unprotected, unencrypted, willy-nilly. They can print it out, leave it places. It puts the consumer's data at risk, right? It doesn't protect the consumer's data. It doesn't. However, on the flip side, let's look at these third-party delivery companies. So like DoorDash has to comply with the CCPA, right? They have to comply with the GDPR, and they have to comply with other types of data privacy laws that exist. So essentially, they build their systems to comply with those laws. Therefore, their systems are more protected, right? They protect the consumer data's more than the average restaurant. Now, of course, no system's perfect. No system's perfect. But there are better systems and there are worse systems. And I just assume that, companies like DoorDash, who has to comply with all of these other rules and regulations, concealing with data consumer privacy, their systems are much better suited to protect consumers' data than other systems are, than restaurants who have no obligation. They have no obligation, right? So that's the thing. So just in overall, just to sum up everything, it's just really there's a lot of data privacy, like consumer data privacy concerns with this new ordinance. And understand, the people who are for this new law, essentially, I understand their point. They're saying, hey, these third-party apps companies are charging high fees, right? I think some were up to 30%. Then they had to make a new law to cut it to, I think, 15 or 5% or something like that. They're charging high fees. They essentially want more. You're right. They're pushing for restaurants to get more from these apps to build a stronger relationship with their customers than what they're getting now, right? They don't want the restaurants to go through these apps, and they just want the restaurants to be more in control with the relationship to their customers, and that's fine. I understand that, but you have to come up with a better way to do it that will protect the consumer's data, right? That will protect the consumer's data. Okay, so that was our story of the week. Again, my name is Christopher Smith. Thanks for tuning in. Next week, hopefully we'll have something also as exciting so that you can hear my opinion on that too. Again, if you have any comments, just leave it in the comment boxes below. And I hope to see you next week.